checking to see with Ms. Davis if we're waiting for other classes to come in. Lauren?
We just have one more class. Dr. Mackey's class is coming. She said she's taking attendance first.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Reseda Regents. Thank you for being here. It is my privilege and my honor to have our Holocaust speaker, Mr. Joseph Alexander, speak to us the second year in a row. I just want to remind everybody, even though we are in a virtual classroom, that we are going to engage and pay attention. And there will be a question and answer portion at the very end. And so if you have a question in mind, you can write it down and then put it in the chat later when it's time for that Q&A portion. But I see that some of you have your cameras turned off, but if I just quickly request for about 2 or 3 seconds to turn on your camera, show your faces, wave, and so we can welcome our guests in the room. And if you want to unmic as well and just say good morning, hello. If I can get everyone to do it in 3, 2, 1, and you can turn it back off. And we see some faces, wave, say hello. I love it.
Good morning.
Good morning. I love it. Thank you, everybody. All right, Mr. Meyerhoff, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm David Meyerhoff, and I'm the Holocaust Speaker Coordinator for LAUSD Northwest Schools. I'm also with the Glendale Unified School District, and I've had the privilege of working with Mr. Alexander for several years now. He's spoken throughout Burbank, Glendale, and Los Angeles schools. He's presented his story throughout Southern California and around the world. His compelling story is unique, even among Holocaust survivors. So, without further ado, it is my honor to present Mr. Joseph Alexander.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
My name is Joseph Alexander, and I'm a Holocaust survivor from Poland, and I survived 12 camps. I come from a small town in Poland, and my father was in business, and I had a nice family. I had parents, 3 sisters, and 2 brothers, and I'm the only survivor. We had a very good life in Poland. Like I said, my father was in business and we were doing very good until 1939, when the Germans came into Poland. They divided Poland in 2 parts. One half was annexed to the Third Reich, to Germany. The second part was Poland under German occupation. Our part, where I lived, was annexed to the Third Reich. After a few weeks, they came to town. In Europe, every town has a town square, and the town square is where most of the business are. And we lived in the square at one corner, the second house on one corner, the third house was an uncle of mine. So after a few weeks, they came and went after the uncle and went around the square and told the people they have 10 minutes to get their possessions and get out in the middle of the square, and they took them away. For some reason, I'll never know why they left those 3 houses when we were the second house. Anyway, man, after they took them away, a rumor started that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. My dad had 3 sisters living 25 kilometers before Warsaw, which it was the part where it's fallen under German occupation. Their life was going on there almost normal. So Dad said, we're not going to wait for them to come and give us 10 minutes. So he went out, he got a wagon. We had some deep wagons, 6-8 feet deep wagons in Poland. And we packed up as much as we could from the store. And they put a few pieces of bedding, household goods on top, because from our part to the other part, you had to go through a border that we're moving. And my parents and one sister and a younger brother, they left. I remained with two older sisters, and we were packing up another wagon. And in the meantime, the Polish people from around the city were coming into town and trying to buy anything they can get, because it takes the business people out. They're afraid they're not going to be able to buy anything. I sold a man a bicycle and a boat of shirt material. On the way home, he had to pass the police station. He got stopped. They thought maybe they were looting. So I asked him, where did you get this? He said, I bought it. And show me a receipt. He said, I don't have a receipt. Then go bring the man whoever sold it to you. So he came back to me and said, you have to come with me to the police station. If not, they're going to come here. So I went with them, and they asked me, did you sell them? And I said, yes. Why didn't you give them a receipt? I said, we in Poland, we didn't give a receipt. So he took that boat material, smacked the guy, go, and let me go. I went back, and my sisters were waiting for me, and we took off. And we left, and we went to a little town named Blonin, about 25 kilometers before Warsaw. So we came there, and they said people were still in business, and life was going on almost normal, but everybody had to go to work. So after being there a short time, I had to go to my first camp. That was in 1939. It was a work camp where you work during the week, and the weekend you can go home. And the work we were doing was building a canal where you stay in the water up to the knee almost without boots. After a while, I was getting blood poisoning. And my sores on my arms and my legs. I went home on the weekend and I said, I'm not going back. Monday morning, the police came to look for me, and my dad said, he's not here, he's supposed to be in the camp. So I stayed away from home for a while, and that was the time where, I don't know if you heard about the Warsaw Ghetto. They were building the wall in Warsaw where the Warsaw Ghetto was going to be. After I got through building the wall, they came out and ordered all the Jews who live within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Warsaw had to move into the ghetto. So we moved into the ghetto. It was a very small place, and they put in 260,000 people. And you imagine the panic and everything it was there was going on. It was terrible. So bad. People were dying every day. With people who walked out to the streets, dead people in the streets, on the sidewalk, everywhere. It was very bad. So I lived in the ghetto over 4 months, and we heard, but since we left our hometown, nothing changed since we left. Everything remained the same. So my parents decided for an older sister, mine, and one younger brother and I, we should go back home. So to go back home, you have to get out of the ghetto. So I had to pay off the guard at the gate to get out. So we got out, and we decided, sister and brother take one street, and I'll take another street, and we walked to the outskirts of town, and that's where we meet. I walked for about 2 blocks, and I had a Polish teenager comes over, and he said, "Give me some money, or I'm going to report you." So I figured I gave him some money, and I got rid of it. And I kept walking. Well, he got on the streetcar, I rode the streetcar for a few blocks, and he comes over again, give me some more money. So this time I gave him some more money, and I changed the street, and I lost it. And I went to the outskirts of town, I met my sister and brothers, and we went home. We got home, I said everything remained the same since we left, nothing changed. But it lasted 3 days. I was free for 3 days. After that, they came out and ordered all the Jewish men from 16 to 60 as a part of the schoolhouse. So I was part of the schoolhouse, and off I went to the camp. So the first camp I went to actually was a quarantine camp. I was there for about 3 weeks. Then I was sent to another camp that was around the city of Poznan. And I was sent out about 5 kilometers in a camp named Steinlich. And that was a camp where we were building a dam. Building a dam was that we had little electric cars, we had to fill them up, they cut down some of the hills, and fill them up, and they take them to another place, they dump it. So the work was very hard, because we had to use picks to loosen up the ground. And the food you were getting was a piece of bread like this in the morning, and a cup of coffee, you went to work. After you came back from work, you got a soup, and the soup was usually from the peels or potatoes or spinach. From this food, you couldn't exist, you couldn't survive working, the kind of work we were doing especially. And the only way we worked with civilians. If you could organize just to get even just a little bit extra, that's the only way you could survive. So people were dying every day, every morning you take out dead people. And to say there were a lot of sub-camps around the city, in the city and around the city. So same thing happened at other camps, so they combined 2-3 camps into one. So I kept moving. And then I was in a camp in the city, and I was laying cobblestones on the street. Then I was doing sewers. I was building sewer. I was a roofer. And then in the S camp I was, we were building a airport. I was laying railroad tracks. I was there in 7 camps, and the train arrived, and it wasn't a passenger train, the cattle car train, where they put 40-50 people onto one boxcar with a little 2-foot window. And the destination we were going, it takes maybe 5 to 6 hours at the most. But we were driving around for 3 days. No food, no water, no facility, nothing. People were dying on the train. Finally, we arrived in Auschwitz. We arrived in Auschwitz, and there's a little town named Oswiecim. And that's where the train stopped. Later on, they built the trains that went straight into the camp. But at that time, they didn't have that yet. So we stopped downtown and got off the train, whoever could walk. About 30-40% of the people were dead on the train already. If you ever could walk, you walked out, and we were lined up in the rows of 5, and we met Dr. Joseph Mengele. He was called the Doctor of Death. He selected people for human experiment or to the gas chamber. We met Dr. Mengele. He said there were 6 kilometers to the walk to the camp. So he said he's going to select people to go to the left, and the people on the left are going to be taken on trucks. So he went through, and he picked me out to go to the left. If I would come from home, I would not differ. But I was already in 7 camps. In every camp almost I went to work. I tried to get into the biggest, strongest man. And here I come to the left, I see old people, sick people, young kids. I said, that's not the kind of people I like to be with. So when Dr. Mengele moved further down, and my luck was it was after midnight. It was in daytime, I couldn't have done it. But he moved further down, I ran back to the other side. If I didn't run back to the other side, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. Because the next morning, we found out the people were taking on trucks went straight to the guest chamber. So after I went back to the other side, and we walked to the camp, I got a shower, and I came out of the shower, and I got a tattoo. Let me see, can you? There, can you see that? Can you see the tattoo?
Yes. Yes, you can.
So from that moment on, that was your name. You had no name anymore. So I got the tattoo, and then there's Auschwitz II, which is called Birkenau. So we walked over to Birkenau, which is about 3 kilometers. And I was in Birkenau for a while. So Dr. Mengele 2 more times in Birkenau. But it was daytime, and I was far away from where he was. He was on a big platform, and I was far away. So I got through. And that was the time, actually, they will bring people in. Anywhere, I try to get out, if I can get out of there. So a short time after, they said they need some tailors. So my grandfather and my father were tailors, so I had a report. And they come right in front of me and said, you go back, we have enough, we don't need any more. So I'm still back in the camp. And that was the time, that was 1943, April 43, where the Warsaw Ghetto uprising was. There was a big uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. So then they said they need a big transport, but they didn't want to take any people from Poland. They only wanted from Greek, Hungary, Italy, any country but Poland. But on the end, they were short about 300 people. And now they said we'll take the people from Poland. So I report, and the same thing, we get on the train, and driving again for 3 days without food or water. And I was going back for the second time for me to the Warsaw Ghetto. So I came back to the Warsaw Ghetto. There was nothing. All the buildings were burned out. There was no buildings left, only remaining walls. And we were supposed to take down the walls brick by brick and clean them up and put them up on stacks of 8 to 10 feet high. But in the meantime, we had no facility. They gave us some prefabs, and we had to put together our own barracks. But in the meantime, until we put all this together, the shirt I was wearing, was no left. It was shredded. There was nothing left from the shirt to shred. It was eaten up by lice. Finally, we built a camp. On Sunday, you got a shower, and you got some fresh clothes. So, in the meantime, the typhus broke out. When typhus broke out, anybody who reported to the hospital, that was the end. Nobody ever came out. I never knew anybody who came out. Typhus is you got a very high temperature, fever. And because I got it, but I didn't want to report to go to the hospital. I was lucky because I had we called a couple like a foreman. He was a German middle-aged man. He was also a prisoner. So he didn't care if it worked or didn't work. So when I got a fever, I was sitting, my arms crossed over for about 3 days until I got over that temperature, and then I was okay. And so that we were doing, taking down the bricks by bricks and cleaning them up. In the meantime, after that, the Polish underground tried to attack our camp to free us. But they were fought all night, they were unsuccessful. So the next morning, they closed the camp and took us out. And we had the job to get out of the city. They said they were afraid that we were going to be attacked by the underground in the city. So we had the job to get out. So we got out and came to a farm, to a big field where the farmer grazed the cows. And the ground is very moist. So they put us up on that field. So whatever means you have, a spoon, a knife, anything, that you could dig up some mud. So you dug up some mud and took the bottom of the shirt and squeezed it through to get a little water. So I got a little water and stayed there overnight. In the morning, we're on the march and we come to the next city. There was a river. So they let us go to the river to get some water. 2 of our people went a little further into the river. Maybe they thought maybe they want to escape to get out. They got shot, got killed in the river. And so we got some water and we started walking. We walked and stayed overnight in the next town. And then in the morning, they let us go to the same river. So they said 100 people at a time can go to the river this time. So I went, we got some water again. And that day, it was a very heavy rain was coming down. We were walking, we were soaking wet. Until we arrived at the railroad station. And in the morning, the same train arrived. And we went to Germany. And this time we were on the train for 3.5 days. We went to Germany to a camp named Dachau. Dachau was the Hitler built in 1933. That was the first camp he built for political prisoners. Then he turned it into a concentration camp with the gas chambers in the oven. So I came to Dachau. I was doing it for 2 weeks. I did nothing because they were establishing about 12 camps by numbers from 1 to 12 within 50, 60 kilometers around Dachau. So then I was sent out to camp number 1 and I was working for a farmer digging potatoes. That lasted about 3 weeks. Then I was sent to another camp number 7, which it was in the city of Landsberg am Lech. It was a small camp, about 150 people, and that was the only camp I was with. Women were in the same camp, but they were blocked up by one corner of the camp by a wire fence. But we went to work together. So when we came there at about 7, there were a small group of us that we were in the camps already over 4 years. So we had the privilege of getting the better job. So friends of mine got their jobs in the kitchen. Some of them were the police in the camp, and a few camps also, few people who had little jobs. And I got a group of five, we were 5 boys and 5 girls. And we were working right outside the gate to the kitchen for the German guards. And I had 2 German men in charge of the kitchen. They weren't the regular army. They were, I don't know, see, more like a National Guard or something. And they were middle-aged men. They were very good to me. Because every day I was going back to the camp. I took some food back for my friends. And we always had some soup left over. So I took one of the milk cans and put it in. And the next morning, people were going to work. So they had to pass by our kitchen. So I stopped them and I gave them some food. So a few times the guard, the officer in charge of the guards complained that I'm holding up the people who work to go to work. So my people said to me, don't worry, let him talk, do what you're doing. And so that I did, it lasted a while until April 28, 1945. All the 12 sub-camps had to go back to Dachau. So we came back to Dachau, stayed in Dachau overnight, and the next morning we were going on what they called a dead march. They supposed to take us in to the mountain in Germany. There's a ski resort named Garmisch. And that's where they're supposed to kill us, in the mountain there. But we walked for a couple of days, and we knew we were not going to be walking too far, because we could hear the American troops not far behind us. And the planes coming over, bombing the cities right close by. So we walked for 2 days, and crossed a little bridge, and the bridge was blown up. So our group was divided in 2 halves. I was on the right-hand side. We were in a village named Königsdorf. And there was a little forest in that village. So they took us into the forest, and they asked for volunteers to take the sick people into that village and put them into the farmers, to the barn, and told the volunteers to come back. On the way back, one was a friend of mine, so they found a dead horse in the snow, so they cut up some pieces, and they brought back, my friend brought back me a piece of meat from the horse, and he gave it to me and he said, do something. So we were in the forest, we had wood, so I made a fire, and I was barbecuing. And believe me, that was the best meal we had in a long time. Here is a picture.
There you go.
That was the friend of mine. His name was Joe Buddha. And that's me in the middle, and on the other side, that's my cousin. So he gave me, so we had the best meal. And during the night, the guards disappeared. Next morning, the German police came, and they took us into that village, and they disappeared. It was the morning about between 8, 9 o'clock. So we just walked around the village and we were waiting to see what's going to happen. So about between 12 and 1 o'clock, an American tank moved in and we were liberated. So when the tank moved in, so the American troops were behind them, but we were a group, we were 9 of us. We were in the camp over 5 years already. We didn't want to get blocked in. So we got through and started to walk to see where the next town is. So we walked for about a kilometer or 2, and there was a German bakery. We got into the bakery and everybody got a bread. You had the bread, you were all right. You were okay. And we walked and come to the next city, and we see the 3 American soldiers, but they were Czechoslovakians then, and they were trying to walk, and they couldn't walk, they were so drunk, they were holding on to each other. But they got the clothes we were wearing, so they asked, are you Polish? I said, yes. So come on. And they took us in to an underground bunker. It was a warehouse. You couldn't see the end of it. It was so big and so much stuff in it. So the first thing, everybody changed clothes, and then took a backpack and put some food in. And there was a big row of bicycles chained up. They broke the chain, and everybody got a bicycle. Then we had to find a place to stay, because when the American tank moved into the village, and the American troops were behind them, so they brought all the rest of the people from our group into that city. It used to be a German Air Force base, and they made a DP camp, a displaced person camp. But we didn't want to go to the camp, so we tried to get out of the street. We couldn't get out because it was 6 o'clock, was curfew, it was after 6. So we hopped over about 3 or 4 fences, and we come to a German inn. And in the back of it was taken over by the American troop, and in the back of the inn was an empty house, so we took over the house. We moved in there. And we stayed in the house. We were living there for 10 days. After 10 days, they came out and ordered anybody who lives outside of the camp has to move into the camp. So we moved into the camp, and we were taken back to another DP camp in Munich, but you were free. You wanted, you could live in the camp, or you can go any place you wanted. So I lived there for 3 days, and then a few friends of mine, we were together in camp number 7 in Landsberg. So we decided to go back there to Landsberg. Landsberg was one of the largest DP camps in Germany. So we went to Landsberg, we went to the camp and registered, and they gave us a room, and I stayed overnight. But I didn't want to live in the camp. The reason we went to register at the camp was there was a lot of DP camps in Germany and all over. So everybody was registered, and then you went through to check the list of every camp to see if any of your families survived. That's the reason we went to register. So I said the next morning, I moved out about 7 kilometers from town to a farm, and I lived in a farmhouse. Lived in a farmhouse about 6 weeks. Then I decided to go back to Poland, to my hometown, to find out if any of my family survived. So I came back to the house and had survivors living on the second floor. On the first floor was some Polish people living. And they told me nobody from my immediate family came back. The only one who came back was a cousin of mine. He was a year younger than I. Matter of fact, we were in the last 2 camps before we went to Auschwitz together. And when Dr. Mengler told me to go to the left, that's when we were separated. So he survived, but he's in a different town. And at that time, it was very bad for the survivors who came back to Poland, because they killed a lot of survivors in Poland. In one town, they killed 42 survivors, a city named Kielce. 42 survivors in one town. So I said, I'm going to get my cousin, and we're going back to Germany. And so we went back to Germany, and we lived in Germany for almost 4 years. because there was no place you could go. You didn't have a passport, so you couldn't travel to anywhere. You had to wait until some country opens up. So it was almost 4 years until when Canada said they're going to take some people in. So I went to register, and then you have to wait for them to call you. So it took a long time, didn't hear anything. In the meantime, a friend of mine lived in the next village, and he came and told me, Joe, you can go now to Munich and register to go to America. So I went to Munich and registered, and we right away, a very short time. I got a notice to go to see, to go to the American doctor to check you out, and then have to go check you out to the FBI. And then I got a note to go to the port in Germany, the port of Bremenhaven, to get the boat. So I went, and I got the boat, and I came to the United States on May 30th, 1949. So I came and I arrived in New York. So everybody who came, either you had some relatives here or an organization to have a sponsor. Everybody had to have a sponsor. So that for 5 years, they guarantee you for 5 years that you won't be a burden to the government. So I was sponsored by a Jewish organization named Joint. And my contract was to go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I was working for a man my father couldn't be better. He was to me. But I was there for 6 months because the cousin who survived had an uncle here in Santa Monica, and he was his sponsor. So I came in May and he came in October. So when he came to October, he told the uncle that I'm in Pennsylvania, and we were the only 2 survivors from both of our families. So that uncle called me a few times. I should come here to Los Angeles so we can be together. So I arrived in Los Angeles in January of 1950, and here I am. But let me tell you something else, which I didn't tell you. When I was in Birkenau, I witnessed people running to the electric fence to get electric wood. I saw people being beaten to death because they gave up. People gave up. And such things I had to, during the times I was in the camp, I had to watch 3 hangings. People trying to escape, and they got cut. And then on Sunday, they used the hanging, and everybody had to come and watch being hung. So the life was unbelievable. You can't even imagine the life. And here, let me show you a picture.
Hold still.
Can you see this?
Yes, we can see it, Mr. Alexander. I also have it on the PowerPoint slide if you want me to put it on.
Yeah, you can put it on. And see, that shows how we lived. It was like shelves, and the one section was for 3 people. No, that's not.
Hang on.
There, that's the one. One section was for 3 people, and on the second row, on the bottom here, on the right, that was Elie Wiesel. If you read his book, that's him on the second row on the bottom. But that was one section was for 3 people. So this is the way we lived. And it was terrible. Things were not good, not good. So that's my story. And here, Nelson, if you want to show the pictures, you can show them now. The other
Sure.
picture.
Let me go back.
Well, this is me here, actually in This was, I think, in Burbank, when I was talking to the Burbank Academy.
Yeah, Woodbury.
That's my number. And here is a picture when in 2015, I was invited by the German government to come back to Dachau to celebrate 70 years the liberation of Dachau. And that's when I met, this was Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. I spoke to her in Dachau. And there we were treated, we couldn't ask for better treatment. And they paid for everything. This is my document I got from Munich. It shows you here on the left side, here, if you can see over here, that I was in the camp from 1939 to May 2nd, 1945. This is my liberation from Dachau. And this is one from Auschwitz. You can see my number on this here, 142584. This is a driver's license which has no expiration date, like a lifetime driver's license from Germany. There's no expiration date on it. And there's the three of us. There's the friend who brought me the horse meat, the one to the left, me in the middle, and that's my cousin on the other side. And that was, the picture was taken in the farm, by the farmhouse. I lived on the second floor in this farmhouse, in the village of Epfenhausen. This is a picture of my father, and that was a picture of my older sister. That's actually the only pictures I have. I don't have any pictures from the rest of my family. Anybody. This is a picture taken in 1923. On the top right, that was my father. Next to him was his brother. He left for England before the war because he didn't want to go into the army. So he left to England, he lived in London, and those were my grandparents. That's their parents, my grandparents. That was taken in 1923 at the Polish border because he couldn't come back to Poland. So they went there to meet him.
This way.
So now I've taken some questions from you.
All right, students, if you have any questions.
Actually, I'm sorry, I don't mean, before we get into the questions, I just want to make a few statements. First of all, thank you so much, Joseph.
You're welcome.
What you have to say is extremely important, but I just want to say that anti-Semitism, racism, and hate are rising in this country at an alarming rate. And there's starting to be a parallel between the United States and Germany in 1933, which really it serves as a warning sign to all of us. And if you see hate, you hear or see racism and bigotry, don't walk by and pretend that it doesn't exist. It's part of your responsibility to say something, do something about it, because hate does not go away by itself. We must unite all the races and all the religions and say never again here and anywhere in the world. Now go ahead with questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you so much, Mr. Alexander. Vince, if you have any questions, feel free to post it in the chat.
No one?
Or teachers too. I know we have some teachers here. Dr. Mackey, Mr. Demandante, Ms. Davis, Mr. Bender.
You got a question?
Feel free to introduce yourself, teachers or students.
Joseph, if you remember, there was, because you have a limited amount of time, but I think what might also be illuminating to the students is how you got out in terms of when you took the train to Austria, and you had your documents and you had to go through the Red Cross. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes, this is without then I was going back to Poland, and I was coming back, and I was going and trying to get through through the Czechoslovakia. There was the Russians were in Czechoslovakia at the time. So coming back, so they said you have to have a visa to get back to Germany from Poland. A visa to go through Czechoslovakia. So I went in Poland, Krakow. There was a Czech consulate, and I got a visa, and I had a couple with me and my cousin, and we all trying to go back, and they actually, because I had papers, the liberation paper and everything, they didn't have anything. So they were my brothers, and the woman was my sister. So we came going back to Czechoslovakia. We got on the train and come to the border of Germany. A Russian officer comes on the train and he says, "You have to go back to Prague, to the capital of Czechoslovakia, to get a stamp." There was no government. That was about 6 weeks after the end of the war. There was no government in Prague. Where do you go to get a stamp? So we went back to Prague, and I said, let's go through Austria. So I went to the Austrian border, and we came to the border. They took everybody off the train, the Russians. They took everybody off the train, took away all the papers you had, and put us up for 3 days. And then you had to go through, they put together a representative from all the European countries, and you had to go through a hearing, and they find out whatever country you were born, they'll send you back to the country of birth. So I went in, so the woman she was supposed to be my sister. She went in for an interview, she didn't know, so I guess he told her, so he put her on the list to go back to Poland. Then I went in, and he asked me, where were you born? I said, in Germany. What language do you speak? I speak German. I picked up a few other words in the camps from other countries. Where in Germany? I said, Cologne, Germany. So, but your sister was here, and she signed the paper. She signed to go back to Poland. I said, she speaks German. You shouldn't understand what she was talking to me. And when I was talking, my cousin was I was in a chair, sitting in a chair, and he was behind me. So I kept pushing to get out, because they had all the pictures in front of me. I was afraid he's going to ask him some question. So I pushed him to get out. And then I had one stamp on one of the papers from the Polish Red Cross. So I showed him, I said, look at this paper there. There's a stamp from the Polish Red Cross that we're going home. So he showed it to the Polish representative. He said, yeah, that's right. So he took the paper the sister supposed to sign and threw it away. Threw it in the garbage can. And so I said, my brothers don't have to come in. So he put us on the list to go back to Germany. We were 78 people, so 22 going back to Germany. The rest of the people, I don't know where they went. So the next morning, they took us, the Russian Guard, we were right by the Austrian border. Took us to the Austrian border to make sure, to hand us over to the Austrian border guard to get on the train to go to Vienna. So we came to Vienna, and Vienna was divided in 4 parts. You had the American, Russian, French, and French, and what is it? No,
Canada or Canada, American,
yeah, American, English, Russian, and so divided in 4 parts in French. So to get to Germany, we had to be on the American part. The American part, so we had to go back to Salzburg. Take the train back to Salzburg and cross the river on boat, and we got to the American side. Came to the American side, we rented a truck, we went back to Germany. So then I was back, I was living, that's when I was living in Germany for 4 more years. So until we came here.
So, Mr. Alexander, thank you. I know students submitted some questions, and I know that Ms. Castañeda is going to start asking those, but I have a question that relates to that. So, how old were you when the experience that started, when you first were sent to a camp, and how long were you in camps altogether?
I was 16, and I was in the camp over 5 years.
Excellent, thank you. Ms. Castañeda, do you have more questions, or would you like me to continue?
I actually have the list for the student questions pre-submitted. I have about 5 questions, I think maybe 4 questions that are a little bit more deep in terms of when I think about the big picture. So one student asks, can you forgive the people who had a part in the concentration camps?
Can I forgive? Never forgive, but you never forget. You know, I'm thinking about this every day, about my family I lost, in the hundreds of uncles and aunts and cousins. So how can you forgive? But I don't carry a grudge. Because today, actually, Germany, it's a different Germany today. People are different today. So that's what it is.
And then another student asked, how did your experience change you as a person?
How did I what?
How did the experience change you as a person?
How they treated me?
No.
Or how did you change through the experience?
How they experience?
No.
And any other person. I don't know how I experienced. I went through a lot, all these things, but we were always came together, and we always just try to get a better life.
What did you say? What did you say
And what did I say?
You're
about
saying.
how you made it?
How I made it? It wasn't easy. But the way I made it is when I lived in Germany, you know, I was liberated in Germany. It wasn't the country I grew up, the country I was born in. I was in a strange country and I had nobody. I had no friends, no relative, nobody. I was 21. So, and I didn't want to, there were DP camps you could go to live, but I didn't want to go to a DP camp to go to get a soup from the kitchen or wait to get a piece of clothing from a package that came from the United States. So I lived on a farm and I was doing it like a black market. So I was doing. So to make a living, I had to do actually what I call black market is, I went to a farmer's, I bought some butter, I bought some chicken, eggs, and took it to the DP camp and sold it. That's how I made a living. And so on.
Just that one thing you say.
Yeah, you're his saying.
Today may be a bad day.
Yeah.
What
Well, this is how I've been asked. I've been asked from a lot of kids when I talk to the school. Because I tell them, like I witnessed the people running to the electric fence to get electrocuted. People being beaten to death. Did you ever think of giving up? I said, no, I never gave up. I never lost faith. I always believed in God. And I said, I may have a bad day today, but I hope tomorrow will be a better day. But never give up.
So one of the questions the student asked is, what do you wish people of the younger or next generation would do to resolve issues around prejudice?
The issues, the result. Well, today, there's a lot of anti-Semitism going on. We have a lot of Holocaust deniers. And I call them, they're crazy, they're stupid. Because all the camps, the evidence in the camps are still in existence today. Thousands of people go there at the camps daily, from all over the world. You go to Auschwitz, Dachau, Majdanek, Treblinka, Buchenwald. All these camps, the gas chambers and the ovens are still in existence. So I tell them, don't listen what they tell you. And if you do hear something, it's not right, don't be afraid to report to the authorities. Because, you know, they killed 6 million Jews. The Jews, the 6 million, they wasn't killed because they were criminals or they went something against the law to do. They only were killed because they were Jews.
Thank you so much. I think that's most of the questions students had. There's a few more, but I think you answered them in your talk. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You know, I think, I don't know, Mr. Ramirez, and Ms. Castaneda, whether students can write what they learned today as something that the teachers could assign to them. You know, what did they learn? What does it mean to them? And if they could put that into, you know, a writing form.
Yes, yes. We'll work with our students. Thank you very much, Mr. Meyerhoff.
And I have one final quick question. Mr. Alexander, how old are you?
I'm 98 and a half, actually,
And you're going to be 99 when?
in November.
Thank you, Dad.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
You,
And I know students have to go to their next class, so we want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. We made a recording of this, and we will make it available to your school, and so that you can use it with classes that were not able to join us today. With that, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Speakers, if you could stay with me, it will be great, and it will be good. We'll continue shortly.
Can I just say something to Miss Davis?
Of course.
I think I was going to talk in your class last
Me
year.
too. Yeah.
So I just want to say I'm still can do it.
Oh, awesome. That's wonderful.
So maybe we could work something out if you want before the end of this year, possibly.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
That sounds great. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. David. Thank you, Mr. Meyerhoff.
You're welcome.
And on
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Yeah,
you,
and
everybody.
also
for coming.
Joseph is on
Yes.
YouTube. If you missed, they're like, his daughter's made like 20 YouTube videos.
I will put the link on the chat. I'll put instructions.
Thank you, Helen.
Okay.
Thank you all. On behalf of Reseda Charter High School, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Well, they get to say, how come we can't see you, Helen?
I don't know. For some reason, my picture's gone.
Really?
I have no idea.
I have to run to another meeting.
No worries, Phyllis. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for moderating.
Thank you, listen.
You're welcome, Mr. Alexander.
Thank
So
you, everyone.
Next Thursday, we're going to have this experience for another group of schools. So are we on your calendar, Mr. Alexander, for Thursday morning and afternoon?
That's the one next Thursday.
Yeah.
Let's see, that's the,
15?
I said that's the 15th.
15, yeah. Yeah.
On the 15th, let me see.
When and
For 10:25. I have, David gave me the 10:25 next Thursday. That's right?
Excellent. In addition to that, in the afternoon, there is one at 1:15. And
You got,
Today, I don't have.
you have, when, next Thursday also?
next Thursday also.
Yeah, there's the morning and then the afternoon.
Oh, you had one, because I thought,
What about today? Are we?
No,
Oh, today it's just the morning. We're good.
Just the morning.
We'll be it.
so, okay, next Thursday, this,
So would you send us the
the link?
link?
with the meeting ID code.